Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 58th episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today I am so excited. We have another amazing guest, and we always have amazing guests. But every time I have somebody on who inspires me, I just get so excited. And today I bring you Michelle G.I. Gardner-Ince. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Hello, everyone. How are you, Teresa? It's such a pleasure and honor to be here. Can't wait to get started.
Awesome. All right. So, as I always do, I start off the episode. I'm going to read you guys a little bit about Michelle, and then we're just going to dig right into the questions. If you're joining us from YouTube, please make sure you hit that subscribe button or hit the bell on the buttons on LinkedIn so you get notifications for when we go live. So, what we are going to do today is we're going to go deep into what it means to branch out and start a small business after one devotes a lifetime to serving one's country. I know there's a lot of you out there who are watching who are in the same position. And we will also discuss how Michelle took her skills honed from years serving in the Air Force and now uses them to help veterans, minorities, and other small business startups. And this will be for anyone who's just looking to make that career change. As the director of the Women Veteran Owned Small Business Initiative, she leads the Department of Veteran Affairs efforts to develop programs that connect and enable women veteran entrepreneurs within the VA, federal, and commercial marketplace. As the architect of the first program of its kind in the federal government, it brings together like-minded female veteran entrepreneurs to position and enable their success and remove obstacles that often stand in their way. This effort is known in the veteran and small business community as VetBizLady or VetBizLadies. Ms. GI is a highly decorated Air Force veteran and retired colonel, having served 20 plus years serving veterans, military troops, and their families. Before creating her own small business, GI Strategic Solutions LLC, an advisory and consulting firm, she held numerous executive level positions. And her experience spans customer centric business operations, training, consulting, strategic collaboration, and directing award winning complex global operations. One of her most significant leadership roles while still serving in the military was as the commander of the Army and Air Force Exchange Service Pacific region, where she led a $1.8 billion retail food and service business with full profit loss responsibility, employed 7,000 plus associates who provided goods and services to over 350,000 militaries, government, civilian, and State Department patrons and their families. While in command, her leadership led to the top highest grossing military exchanges in the world 2 years in a row. Her personal mission is to be about the business of America's veterans, serving those who continue to serve America. Miss GI has a unique perspective in that she's never been without a military ID card, and we'll talk more about this. She is a veteran and a military spouse, and she grew up in an Army family. Her father and Vietnam veteran Colonel Arthur Gardner commissioned her. Welcome once again.
Wow.
So I think the first thing that
Hey, Teresa, I'm getting delayed signal on my end. You were choppy. Am I choppy on your end?
You are not choppy on my end. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
So I think we're good. Oh yeah, no worries. And then my husband normally watches the show and he'll kind of stick into the comments and let me know if there's any delays. So, but like I said,
Okay.
So we'll let you know if there's anything. I'm hearing you just fine. If
Okay.
you could go back in time to where you were when you decided to join the military. Yeah, my husband just said I'm seeing and hearing both of you perfectly. What was the reason you decided to spend a lifetime in the U.S. military?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm just humbled that this little Black girl, from Georgia, born to Willie Mae Hall Gardner and Arthur R. Gardner, would have the distinct opportunity to, just to serve so many Marines, airmen, soldiers, and sailors throughout my 27-year career and continue it, doing what I do now, serving military and veteran women in the area of entrepreneurship. I will tell you, I didn't start out thinking that I would join the Air Force. I'd seen my father and you can see the shadow box behind me. That's
Mhm.
half his and half 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 mine. I didn't think I would go in the military. I went to Tuskegee, and my dad said I needed to go there because I didn't know who I was. I was a little black girl, have been raised as the only black officer's kid most of my youth, and so I went there, and basically, Tuskegee was a federally funded school at that time, and everybody had to take ROTC and PE. And the logic of a 17-year-old was that the Air Force ROTC would be, those ladies with the cute blue uniforms didn't look like they were going to be getting dirty. And so I signed up for ROTC, Air Force ROTC, instead of PE. I was in one semester and said, oh my God, I get to boss people around and they really listen. And then the second semester, I ended up having a 3.5 year ROTC scholarship. And I thought I was going to stay 4 or 5 years, and the rest is history. So that's how I got in. But really, it was just seeing my ability to impact the Air Force's ability to impact people in their lives and serve them really touched me, and I love that.
Wow. So, you were a logistics officer, I'm assuming, in most of your career?
I was, well, it's similar to logistics. In the Air Force, we call it services, which is hospitality. That's everything from, we call it cradle to grave, right? So from the time kids enter daycare at childcare centers, we run childcare centers. And then we also give, the last military honors. And so that's department stores, that's hotels, restaurants, golf courses, bowling centers, and fitness centers, everything in between. I've had a water plant, a bakery, and a 1,000-acre horse stables be under my command. So it's every and anything you could think of that a city or an Air Force city would offer families and airmen.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
When
it's
you wait, yeah, when you came into this, what did you were you kind of overwhelmed, and then how did you find your groove in such a challenging position?
absolutely. So, the way the progression goes is you start out being in charge of one thing. And I was a food service officer first, then I was a lodging or hotel manager next, and then I went to teaching other young officers to do that. And then I went into my first, what we call a division chief, which would be a very small, like, squadron of people, maybe, 70 or 80 people. And then you just start to progress, and then you have larger groups and larger groups, all the way up to the point where I was a commander with all of those things I just mentioned. And then I've been a base commander, which is basically like being in charge of the city for an entire base or installation. So over 27 years, I got to do some amazing, absolutely amazing things, and I
Wow.
loved every minute. I loved every minute.
That's amazing. What would you say was probably the most when you were in command? Because that's always like the
Mm,
pinnacle of one's
yeah,
career.
yeah,
And what
yeah.
would you say was probably the most fulfilling, but then also the most challenging of those roles?
Hmm. I'm going to start with the challenging first. You know, um, First of all, I'll tell a story. I remember I was the commander at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, and I'm going around touring the base with the base commander because, one of the things about being a commander with a lot of facilities, the exterior and the entrance and the service is very important. And he wanted to point some things out to me. And so while we were in the car, I was in the staff car with him. Now, mind you, he's the base commander, so he's got police um, car lights inside of his grill, like a lot of commanders do for emergency operations. And so I said, "Sir, I want to show you the new dining facility, that we're going to have, or the flight kitchen we're going to have on the flight line, and some of the progress we've done." And he said, "Okay, well, let's just go over there now." Well, I'm driving in the car with him in the passenger seat, and and this red truck speeds by, and him being who he was, he decided to go in hot pursuit of this truck that was speeding above the speed limit on the flight line side road. And he pulls the truck over, and he's just like, let me see your ID card, and da-da-da-da. And he goes, and then he asked the question no commander wants to hear, who's your commander? And he points to me in the car that he just got out of, that my commander just got out of. So I would tell you, one of the hardest part is being responsible for stuff that you have absolutely nothing to do with, but you are, it's one of the things I love about leadership. I posted it, earlier this week. If it's good, it's leadership. If it's bad, it's leadership. So everything, John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I would say that was the hardest part is, being responsible for people, and and when you have a lot of facilities, everything, you're responsible for everything,
Oh, yeah.
and so that, I would say, that really made it tough. And then, the other tough part was disciplining, people when you had to, knowing they were good people. And, I was known to be very, very tough, as a lot of female officers are, because we have to operate in that very, I call it male energy. That's what they call it now. But, back in my day, you didn't cry. You were tough. You drove to the other side of the base or home to cry. You put the tea bags and the ice on your face, and you came back like nothing had happened, right? And
Right.
so, but I gave a Article 15 and an MSM in the same year. And somebody said, well, why would you do that? Well, when I gave him Article 15, I gave him a suspended bust. And I said, we were in Korea, he was selling dishes. I kept ordering new dishes for the dining facility, and they kept getting lost. No, he was selling them on the black market. But at the same time, he was the best food service operation in the entire Pacific Command. So one didn't cancel out the other. So I had to discipline him. But I tell commanders, we must share, that UCMJ authority to change people's lives, to give them a felony, is serious. And we have to have grace. And I will tell you, this example of grace, he stayed clean for the next 7-8 months until he PCS'd. He got the meritorious service medal. That meritorious service medal got him promoted to E7 the first time. And when he finished his career, he was the Air Force Chief of Staff's enlisted aide. So if I had killed him at an earlier stage, he never would have gotten there. And he transformed the entire enlisted aide career field in the Air Force. Now you get certified in wines as a sommelier. You get certified as a professional carver. You get certified as a home manager, which is almost, $70,000 course. And when you leave the military, you now can go manage the homes of the rich and famous. And it was all because of Chief Master Sergeant Steve Ray, who I gave grace to when he had a line number for E6. So, I just love that story. They always don't turn out that way, but that is one of the hardest things, I think, as a leader and as a commander. And one of the most rewarding things is to get to promote people, to retire people, and to celebrate them and elevate them. And so, yeah, I would say that's, that is really the good and bad of leadership. And I have a saying, the place every great leader should want to be is close to God. Because when you think about all the opportunities to mess up the mission, see, the mission oftentimes can be redone. But more importantly, the lives of people, the place that every great leader should want to be is close to God. Because when we get too much ego about the power we have and how we wield it, and worrying about what other people think, we should be worrying about the lives that God has entrusted in us. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that a leader can do, any leader can do, is to realize you will be held accountable either now or later when you have bad or toxic leadership. So you can tell them, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree with you, Michelle. And I think that that's the thing about leadership that, is so difficult is the fact that, when it's good, it's great. And yes, but it can be a very thankless and just grunt job because you really are
Yes.
responsible to know what is going on with everything at all times. And
Yes.
it's a lot to like keep track of. I'm in a leadership role now and I haven't been in one in a few years. And it's so much just to keep in, oh my God, you must have gone through the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Just keeping
Mm-hmm.
your brain caged around everything that you could possibly need to understand. When you were in that role, I was just listening to a podcast about white space and balance. And
Mm-hmm.
how did you day to day manage a space or a time in your day to just sort of de-stress or to sort of process what was going on and all the different things that were coming your way?
Uh, Absolutely. First, let me say I went to a French change of command in the Navy who runs all of the civil engineering or operations for the entire West Coast. Very
Mhm.
impressive. My first Navy like formal event, right? And he was
Mhm.
saying the same thing. He was like, "How do I manage all this thing? I've got to learn this." And I said, "No, you have to lead. You don't have to learn.
Yeah.
You are not." And that is one of the biggest challenges as a leader is that we think we have to know everything. No, we have to know the right things to ask. We have to have the right people in the right place, especially in those places of, high visibility, and we have to have high trust of those people. And so, I think one of the techniques that I always use is I use pulse points. There are certain things in every operation that if that one thing happens, it's going to show outside, right? It's going, there's some things that you have as a commander you can control. Nobody's going to know that it's kind of, on the
Mhm.
brink and you can bring it back. But there are things that will get to your boss's level, right? Or above or outside. Those are things that I always maintain pulse points are on, and I want to check those on a regular basis because I know if those are out of whack, it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be ugly for everybody, or that it has a large impact. As far as white space, I'll tell you when I've been in self development for a very long time. So a lot of what I do, and still to this day, is I used to listen to, John Maxwell tapes, right? Miles Monroe is another leadership phenomenal guy. Just to try to have techniques and tools about what can I do to lead better, right? And that white space kind of, I felt like I had a mentor all time. I'd be working on my computer and I'd have it playing in the background. And then my children, I got married late, had children late, and they always gave me escape space. And my husband, much like yours, tremendously supportive. He would drop off. He would pick up in the evenings. I would drop off. So I
Mhm.
protected the time in the morning unless I had a meeting. That was my time to talk with them and see the world through their eyes. And so, to this day, that my family and my faith and just learning and wanting to grow and be better as a leader and as a person is what gives me peace. And then I kind of learned to love myself at a very very early age, being the only Black officer's kid on the post almost from first grade kindergarten through high school. I was always the only Black officer's kid. So the whites didn't like me because I was Black. The Blacks didn't like me because they thought, oh, she thinks she's better because her dad makes more money than my dad. And so I learned, I tried everything. I've been a fool. I've tried to pay. I've done, let people embarrass me. And I realized there's nothing I can do to make people like me. If
No.
they don't like me, it's their problem. And imagine I had a good grasp of that by the time I went to college. And so as a result, I don't really need um, a lot of I'm not externally driven. I don't really care what people think. I care what my family thinks. I care what God thinks according to my values. And so
Right.
I think that helped a lot in that I didn't look for affirmation and from, I didn't look, I'm always competing against myself. And so I think that really helped me kind of really stay on track because, and I want to go back to something, the discipline actions, right? In the Air Force, and I don't know how it is in the other services, if you discipline at a lesser level than other commanders, they look at it and then it's kind of like, well, why are you being so lenient? Aren't you a strong leader? Aren't you holding your people accountable? You can let things get out of hand. And so I think that puts pressure on leaders and commanders to maybe be harder than they really would be. And it takes a lot of strength to stand firm and set your own standards for what you believe a good discipline and order is in your particular organization. So, I love this thing of leadership, but I there is one place I go. I try to go to several conferences every year, kind of plug in and recharge. That's my college, homecoming. It's like going back and seeing people that you've known, when you were just trying to figure life out, and to see their progress and to just be affirmed, right? And so that, Tuskegee's homecoming, which is coming up in a week or two, is always something that really charges me. Being around very smart, amazing women and seeing what they're doing, how they're achieving, how they balance it all, uh, inspires me and puts juice in my tank. And then the last thing I would say is I love mentoring. I've always been a very strategic and deliberate mentor. And I all started back when I was a second lieutenant, and I worked for an E9 called Chief Ed Moran. My dad said, who was an Army colonel, said, when you get in, find a good senior NCO and hold on to their coattails and listen to everything they did. So for the first 3 years I was in the Air Force, I worked for a Chief Master Sergeant. Chief Master Sergeant didn't work for me. I was the chief's lieutenant. He was not the chief's, he wasn't the lieutenant's chief. And I think a lot of who I am as a leader is because of that. He taught me how to be technically competent. He taught me how to manage enlisted troops. He taught me how, when you're challenged, on your decisions, how to show and look in the regulation. And most of all, he taught me how to mentor because of the respect he gave to me. If I did something wrong, people knew you went to the chief and the chief would mentor the lieutenant. And so he would pull me aside and say, hey, Lieutenant, X, Y, and Z. And I respected that. As a result, I have mentored 10 chief master sergeants. A couple of them went the officer route, and I would pick them up and at the E5, E6 level. And I taught at Airman Leadership School. And then once I got a few under my belt, the old would teach the young. And then it just kind of went from there. So I'm very proud of, my mentorship. Not, and it continues. It still does. I try to help anybody I can. So I know it's a long answer, but
No,
anyway.
I just got so much from listening to you. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that you just said was the fact that you were always looking to learn from others, and as well as paying forward what you were learning. And
Yes.
you always surrounded yourself with healthy, positive people and resources, whether it's like you
Yes.
said, you were listening to a John Maxwell tape while you were working, or you were always doing things to be a little better and to push yourself
Yes.
to grow just a little
Yes.
bit more and the
Yes.
day before, and you didn't
Yes.
compare yourself. And I think comparison really is the
Oh
thief
my
of joy.
God.
And but and then because we don't all, and I say this all the time, you don't start life, none of us do, in the same place.
True.
So if everybody, even the person who's, let's say has multiple felonies and is, has all these legal problems, and they've come from a broken home and they've just been in and out of trouble all their lives, don't compare that person to, the
Well,
CEO of a corporation. No,
that's right.
say, go, well, what can I do differently? How can
Yeah,
I live my life a little differently than I did a month ago or 2
right,
months ago? What new
right,
choices
right,
can I make?
right,
And,
right.
you know,
And I
and
think we have to give them grace. You just brought up a good point. When I was the base commander, I used to go visit them in jail, and I took my children with me for a reason, right? It was good, lessons there. But I would say too, I would always tell them, I am only one decision away from where you are. And I think we have to realize that at any time we could be weak, we could be tired, we could our judgment could be clouded, and we could make a decision that would be where they are. And I try to remind myself, because when we think that we're perfect, and oh, believe me, I had that season where, oh, my life was perfect, my husband was perfect, my kids was perfect, everything was perfect. But when you really think about one decision, you look at whether it's a general officer, whether it's a politician, whether it's an entertainer, anybody who's gotten in trouble, it started with one decision, just one. And to realize, if they had been thinking clear headed, if they had had the right influence, that one decision may not have happened. But once it does, how do we help? And I used to always give them John Maxwell's book, Failing Forward, which is an amazing book on someone who has fallen and is trying to find their way back. How do they do that? And one of the things he says is, when you fall or fail, pick something up while you're down there. And I think what he means by that is, um, when you're on the floor, have you ever dropped something on the floor or you've fallen? What you see when you're down there, I didn't know that was under the sofa, or I didn't see that. You kind of look up and you see this whole new perspective
So true.
on something, right? And so I think that's our job as leaders, our job as friends and supporters, is to help them not just be so quick to pop up. You know how people, when you fall, you pop up because you don't want to
Mhm.
be embarrassed, you want to get up really
Right,
quick.
right.
Stay down there for a little while. Right, right. So, I think you're exactly right, but that comparison thing makes commanders, um and those who sit on these Article 15 and discharge boards, it makes them make decisions that they think their leadership wants them to. I remember sitting on an Article 15 or a discharge board, and I said, "Hey, this guy really deserves another chance." And it was the issue was that he had done drugs. So it's some other people, but some other people had some people advocate for them. Some other people were not African American, and if you don't believe that's happening, a whole study was done on DOD on how there's more tougher judgment given
Mhm.
to airmen, sailors, and Marines that are of color. But I tried to get my other members on the board to give him another chance, and their response was, I'm not gonna make my boss think I support people who do drugs. And I was like, wow. And what could I say? I understood that. I don't try
Mhm.
to judge people. I mean, that's where their comfort zone was. They thought that their career might be impacted by supporting someone who did drugs, and I was voting for rehabilitation, but they did not, and that young man was put out of the service. So I just think the comparison thing in leadership, it really requires some real confidence in who you are as a leader, and unwavering values. My values are this, and stay right there. And it's not popular, and you know that you've
Yeah,
made decisions, and as well. So
I
yeah.
have.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
I've definitely made my share of unpopular, decisions, and I've made my share of mistakes, and like you said, I've been in those moments where you're down there and you're vulnerable, and you have to take what you can learn from that situation, and I try to do this healthy balance of not beating myself up, but then at the
It's
same
hard.
time, oh, it is, because I can second guess myself and overanalyze and beat to death, a situation and think, "Well, what could I have done differently?" I try to balance that with what was I supposed to take away from that circumstance?
Mhm.
What was
Mhm.
the lesson that, that God was trying to teach me? Like, what was I supposed to walk away with? And then at the same time, also not taking all the ownership, looking at the situation in a way where you go, okay, this was my side of the street, but then there was a responsibility and a piece to the other side of the street that
Absolutely.
wasn't my responsibility. And that's okay to just, let that go and go, okay, I did my part. I owned what I needed to own. And the other part, I can't, I don't have control of that.
Absolutely. And I think, would you say that, when you said, okay, what am I supposed to learn? How long were you in leadership before you came to it's not all my fault, or it's not all their fault, but it's
Somewhere in
me?
between. It was after I've done, this is only I've done other small scale leadership jobs, but this is now my second one. And the first one I did for 2 years. I would say it was probably about 6 months after that 2-year period was
Mhm.
when I was able to kind of look at the situation holistically and say, okay, these were the things I did to exasperate the situation.
Mhm.
These were the things that were outside my control.
Right.
And then I can already see, I've been in this job now for 2 months, that there's things I don't do. I have so much more patience with
Yes.
people. I
Yes.
don't task the same way. I used to be very demanding in the way that I would
Yes.
task. Now
Yes.
I ask instead of
Yes.
task.
Yes.
I have a conversation about a job.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I never try to task over email or phone.
Yes.
Always want to do it in person so that you've
Yes.
got that face to face. There's just
Yes.
things that I do differently now as a leader based on that experience. So I'm so grateful that it happened, because I know
Yes.
it made me better. But yes, to answer your question, I had to take some time to reflect and
Yeah.
really analyze what happened and go, okay, these are the things I did correctly. These are the things I could have done better.
And I want to say that I think, leading as a woman is very different, right? And it's different because, it it was a long time, and again, it was had a lot to do with the era in which I led. I came in. I had to be tough. I had to be. My daughter
Mhm.
will repeat this now. I try to teach this to her, but let her realize, okay, it is okay to be vulnerable. But I used to tell her, "Are you crying? Why are you crying? If someone's husband or family member's not hurt, you're not hurt. Why are you crying because somebody gave you a task, or because the task is different or difficult?" And that's the way I was, just like, "Suck it up, get on
Yeah,
with it, right?"
I was
And
kind of the same way.
yeah, and so, now what I realize is that, um, if you can get someone to be vulnerable enough to accept help, right? I believe in crossing across lines in teams. So if someone else is a strong writer and someone else isn't, some people would say, well, no, they need to learn to be a strong writer. Are they a good enough writer to get the message across? But does another team member who might be their peer need to review what they did because they're excellent? Because the level of effort and damage to their self-esteem it will take for you to harp on them
Oh,
about
such a good
about
point.
about about getting it right, you kill them. And then what they do is they go into quiet quitting. Well, they don't think I'm good at this, but instead develop the trust of, it's okay to ask for help. If that person is strong, let that person help. And where you're strong, help the other person. And so then what happens is this strong peer, alliance that happens across the organization. And then guess what? I'm not threatened because you're my peer and we both work for the same boss and you're doing part of my job. And vice versa. But that has to start at the top to give them permission so that they don't feel like they're in competition, right? And they can't be vulnerable, because what happens is the entire team organization wins
It's
because
so true.
everybody's working in their strongest area.
Mhm. Oh my
Because
god, absolutely.
people think like, oh, GI, you're so awesome at that. Well, guess what? I don't do anything that I'm not good at.
Right, right, and it's knowing what
I
you're
give it to
not good
somebody
at.
else.
Yeah, like, I'm not good with detailed spreadsheets and,
Mm,
things that are very, very much, methodical. I am
mhm.
very good at understanding how to keep track of a lot of balls in the air
Yes,
and being able to write things down and having sort of a methodical approach to things. So, what I try to do is I give the tasks that I know I'm not good at, to the
yes,
people on my team that I know are very good at those tasks, and then, like you said, you can't just keep beating somebody up about something that they are not good at. You have to decide for your team, okay, let's put that one person that's super good at this one thing on the task that they're good
yes.
at and they enjoy doing because that just brings out the best in them. I mean, I'm very lucky in public affairs. We have a wonderful mix of artists, of
Mm,
designers, of
neat.
videographers, photographers. We get these people that really aren't necessarily like your brick and mortar military types. We get a lot more creatives and
Creative.
yeah, and it's such
You know,
a neat field.
it's funny because there's, when you get to be my age, and I've been working 40 years, so, and I've been leading 40 years. And so you come up with these principles, mantras, whatever you live by. And one of them I live by is you put the right person in the right job at the right time, they can do the work of five. Their
Mhm,
addition and their multiplication. You put the wrong person in the wrong job at the wrong time, their division and subtraction. Just think of any team that has been
mhm.
just totally jacked up. It's because somebody is in the wrong position. And
Yep.
instead of the leader having the courage, and it takes courage because those people generally don't want to move, they're comfortable, but they mess up everything around them, right? They don't want to move them,
Mhm.
but you have to sometime for the team, right? You have to.
And you have to tap into what people like to do best and what their skill, not even what their skill set is, what they enjoy working on. And
Yes,
you
yes,
can and people do. I mean, one of the wonderful things about morning meetings, and I try to keep them as brief as possible, is you always listen to what somebody's telling you they're working on. What do they volunteer that they're working on? What is
yes,
their next thing? Well, then
yes,
that's probably something that they're either proud of or something that they want to keep
yes,
doing. So it
yes.
doesn't really I'm learning it doesn't do me a lot of good to just keep asking about the one thing that they haven't because maybe that's something that, they
That
don't
needs to go
really
to somebody else.
yeah, maybe you should go to somebody else. Maybe, yeah, you have to just kind of decide what are the things that people are most comfortable doing, and what are the things that maybe you take off their plate because
Yeah,
they're not the right person for that job. So
yeah,
it's such a challenge to lead, but it's also such a joy and to
isn't
see
it?
people succeed and to see a plan come together. It's an amazing process. So I think my next question then we'll transition a little to the decision that you made. You were in for 27 years and you
Mhm.
retired as a colonel. How did you get into the Miss GI thing? You're now a LinkedIn top voice. You've got a business. How did
Oh,
all that come about?
well, first of all, I've always been entrepreneurial, right? I mean,
Mhm,
having been in all of the hotel, restaurant, all of that has to generate a profit. That is what when you see the MWR fund, and when new facilities are being built, new services are being offered on a post for military members and their families, that money comes from the Army Air Force Exchange Service, or from the generation of revenue from the clubs, the child care centers, the gyms, all of that are, not so much the gyms, but that's almost like a break even. But other clubs and hotels and restaurants have to make money. And when they make money, they not only pay for their staff, but they also make money to bring new revenue. So I've always been, entrepreneurial, if you will. Then I would say, after and imagine I'm coming out of the Air Force. I've managed $1 billion portfolio, right? And I say, I am going to run a business. I am going to be a great CEO. I'm going to make $1 million in 1 year. I failed. I failed. I was in business 2 years. I still have my business now, but I don't generate any revenue because of the job I'm in right now. But I was in business for 2 years as a subcontractor to two veteran-owned businesses, and I failed. And this is why I'm so passionate about what I do. First of all, I will never name their names, but they did not take care of me. They did not mentor me. They took advantage of what I did not know. And I think that's the challenge of transitioning into business, right? You may be very technically skilled, you understand processes, but you do not understand the other side of the table. It's all about where you sit. People go, oh, I'm a contracting officer. I know. No, you don't. You don't know what it's like to fish and catch and eat what you catch. The military has been giving you fish. They put up the infrastructure. They figure out how to pay the contractor. They figure out how to do all the HR things. All of that's on you. And if you don't understand how to do those systems, oh, by the way, it's feast or famine because you're not making enough money to go hire those people. So you have to do it yourself. You're going into a new country called government contracting, which has a whole new language, whole new culture, whole new way of doing things, and you don't know. And there's a lot of information, but what do I need to know now? And what do I need to execute? So bottom line is I failed. And then a friend of mine, and this is what I think is amazing about having a brand. I always have had a brand of, I'm a person, as my now 25-year-old this weekend says, Mom, you're a person who brings powerful people together. And I go, oh, I never thought about that. So I've always done a lot of large professional organization events where I'm always bringing people together. And so Squadron Officer School is the first leadership training that officers go to. Well, one of my colleagues that we all grew up and made colonel together ran the veteran hiring program for the VA. And VA has a goal to, have 40% of its staff be veterans. He called me. He says, hey, GI, I got this S.O.S who says he's looking for somebody who can run stuff and who can fix stuff. And he said, that's GI. And that's the power of having a brand, right? And so I came to this interview, really funny story. Came to this interview and he said, can I give him your resume? I came to the interview and I put, money in the parking meter in DC, 2 hours, hey, 2 hours. This is a 4-hour interview. 4 hours later, and I left that interview and I thought, I better freaking get this job because I've got a $50 ticket waiting on my car, and I did. So, basically, I don't know how many people get hired this way, but I was hired before the job even came out on USA Jobs.
Oh,
and
wow.
That job was running the certification program, Veteran Business Certification Program for VA. That's what I came into. And so, and because I had a passion for, for business, I'm a big integrity. I believe you must build integrity into any process. If you don't, it leaves too much room for people to apply their own standards. I'll just put it that way. And so, when I came, there were people who got verified maybe in days because of somebody they knew or how much stars and rank they had. But there were other people who were privates and sergeants and, young officers who would take them almost 200 days to get through the process. And I was there to fix that. And so I told my boss at the very beginning, I don't care if you're the president's mama. I don't care if you're the president's daughter. First in, first out. If your application starts here, you're going through the process. And so by the time I left that job some 3 years later, we were one of 3 VA organizations ISO 9000-1 certified. And we went from almost 200 days in the process to 40 days.
That's awesome.
So that's how I came into VA. That's how I got into small business. And when I heard the stories that broke my heart about people putting second mortgages on their homes and things like that to get, their business going. And here it is, they couldn't get a contract because they needed that certification in order to get the contract. That really broke my heart. And so, that's really how I came into the entrepreneur space. And it was a perfect fit because I've always fixed things. My dad was one of the first Black Army Corps of Engineers, and he said to me, Michelle, leave deep footprints. And some people may think that means walk heavy on people, but what he meant by is every place you go, they should know you were there. You should create history. And so in every job I've had, I've either been a first, I've created some new program that never has been. I have been a trailblazer my entire working life. I'll put it that way. And now that comes with a cost now. When you are ruffling feathers and
I know.
It comes with, it sounds really cool, but
it does on paper. But it comes with a price. And what I'm hearing, Michelle, and I don't know if you see this with a lot of women, and I'll be honest with you, and please don't take this the wrong way, and I think you'll take it the right way. I don't notice it as much with Black women, but I notice it with white women, and I'm just going to say it. A lot of them are they're people pleasers, and sometimes they are nice, and I feel sometimes that somebody like myself, and like I said, I've always noticed with Black women, they're a lot stronger, and they'll voice their opinion. They'll tell you how they feel, and you know what you see is what you get. And I'm saying, and I'm not saying all Black women are all white women.
Or all white women. I got it. But I'm loving this conversation.
I'm just being honest, and
I think this is a conversation needs to be had, and we may need to do a whole episode because I think it's important.
I mean, and maybe it's just in public affairs. I don't know what it's like in other parts of the military or other parts of business, but I get a feeling and a pressure sometimes to be more soft, to be nicer, to be more, and I would agree.
Feminine energy. That's what they're calling it.
Yes. And I definitely get that sense. And I always have wondered, like, to be somebody that questions things, or like you said, ruffles feathers, because to make change in any organization, and in order to fix a broken system or a disorganized office, you have to be a person that's not afraid to make people a little uncomfortable. Now, there's a way to go about it. There's a light way, and you have to explain everything that you're doing, and you have to be patient. You can't do it overnight. But
could you have told me that like 20 years ago?
But I sometimes wonder if business just isn't ready for sometimes a strong woman who holds people accountable and has standards.
You just described me. I tell people either people love me or they dislike me. There is no middle ground. There isn't, oh, GI's okay. No. So if I'm there, you know I'm there. I'm decisive. I'm very unemotional. I can compartmentalize. And oh, by the way, I only need about 70% of the information to make a decision, because all of that experience I've had over the years tell me what success looks like. I'm very comfortable in the ambiguous. I'm very comfortable in high risk areas. And it's very, as one of my colleagues who's from one of the African countries said, he said, Michelle, if you were in my country, you would be a man. And I laughed, right? Because I agree. I agree. But also women have a tendency to dislike me because I am that way, right? But somebody said, I had somebody that worked for me, that said, how do you get these guys to listen to you? And I'm like, first of all, you have to gain their respect.
You do. You have to be competent.
And you gain their respect by, I'm going to say this because it sounds, since we're going here, girl, we're just going in, right? I don't care if it's my time of the month. I'm like this. I'm straight as an arrow. I'm not moving. I'm not emotional. I don't care if I had issues with my husband. I'm like this. I'm not like this. So, somebody said to me also that, hey, you were in a really tough spot and you just held resolve. But I think that has to do with the strong Black women that we saw growing up. I will say that, my mother is, will be 84 years old in January, has a second home in Goldsboro, North Carolina, texts you at 3:00 in the morning. She's gone. She's Army Wife of the Year. for 1973, my grandmother and my great grandmother were all very strong women because of what they had to persevere. But at the same token, that's how we get the angry Black woman when we are tired of having to over explain. We are tired of having to justify, why we're right, being questioned, being told because we're passionate about something that means we're angry. I had a
Emotional.
colleague. Yeah, we're not emotional. I'm passionate about this. And oh,
Right.
by the way, you should be too. Like, you may show your passion in a different way, but because of my background, I've been a cheerleader. So I've always been an extra drama, glamour girl, that's me. That's what you're going to get. I'm not changing that. I have learned to, like, when I disagree with something, to make it conscious, keep a straight face. But that didn't happen early on. I took a couple of theater lessons, like I think every dramatic woman should, and learn to, tone it down. Now I just, like, I don't care. You get what you get. But I think it has to do a lot with the strengths that Black women have seen. I think also that women who are in the military, we have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
We have to fight to be respected. We have to not fight like fight, but we have to battle. We're questioned differently. We're like, I don't know if they know what they're talking about. All those things make us just want to dig in more and prove, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I had a parent who was an '06 at the time, and I was a major when I had my son, and he said to me, I was in there advocating for something because I was president of the PTA, and he said, just say what you're going to say, Michelle. You don't saying it again doesn't make people. You don't have to prove yourself. And it took me a long time to really understand what he was saying. Now I say it, I mean it. If you don't get it, it's your loss. And I used to want to jump up and down and prove. I don't prove anything now, boo. If you don't get it, you don't get it, right? If you don't get my gifts, my value, you don't get my presence. And
Yeah.
I'm presence as well as presents, both with a C and a TS, because I am a valuable member of any organization. I promise you, I'm a giver. I'm generous by nature. I want this organization to win. And it's not about me. But if you don't see my contribution as a present, and you don't recognize my presence, meaning actively I'm present, I'm giving, I'm not tuned out. If you don't get that, then you don't get that. You don't get all of the way that the organization could be improved.
Right.
If you respected and valued me. And so I think, just the white, Black woman thing, some of my best girlfriends are redheads. And I love redheads because I think redheads know what it's like to be different. They have a tendency to be spicy, and we just gelled, right? And they are just as resolved. So I agree, it's not all. I think it's some, and I think you get to the point where you don't need anybody's permission to be you.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And I think that resilience and having struggle makes you into I think this kind of person, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
because people
Mm-hmm.
who are feisty or who, then you have to do it respectfully and you choose your battle.
Absolutely.
You're not going to win
Absolutely.
everything. I mean, you don't want to be,
Absolutely.
you never want to be combative, and there's a lot of things
Right.
you do have to let go, but to strategically choose the things that you're going to take on to make an organization better. I always have felt like, why do you even exist if you're not trying to move things forward? Like, like, why are
It's
you
like
just
bland food. It's
like
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 bland
like
food.
you're
Who wants
wasting
to eat bland
time?
food? You can be salty, sweet, sour, whatever, but be that, but just be that consistently. Like, people are
Right.
sarcastic. I get people who are sarcastic. If you're sarcastic all the time, I get it. That's you, right? If you're sweet all the time, I get it. That's you. But don't be bland. Like, the wind is blowing this way and then I'm going this way. I say, what does it say? The Bible says, Be hot or cold. If you are lukewarm, I will spit you out.
Yeah.
That's the
No, it's
word of God. And that's the same thing in being a leader, right? You have to
absolutely
stand for something. And I think what you're saying is true that, when I was young, that's why I said, could you have told me that? I wanted to fight and win everything. I thought I had to give my opinion on everything. I thought I had to do everything.
right.
Now I only want to do the things that I'm best at. If I'm
Mhm.
not best at it, I don't want to do it. If I'm not best at it, I don't even compliment. I don't even comment anymore. I'm like, there's
Mhm.
nothing for me to say. Somebody is far smarter, knows far more. I may know something, but it's not enough to really have a comment on. And I just sit quietly, right? But wow, that took 40 years, girl. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of wisdom that comes with
Yeah.
with aging and then understanding where you're at and getting just more comfortable, like you said,
Mhm.
in your skin, understanding what gifts you bring to the table, and just walking into an organization going,
Mhm.
"Well, okay, how am I gonna not only use my gifts, but how am I going to capitalize on the strengths and the
Ab-
gifts of others to help move the organization forward?"
Absolutely. And
And
learning who those influencers are.
Oh, yeah. Those people in the organization who may not hold a leadership position, but who are the ones that everyone is going to and counting on and moving things forward.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about some of the initiatives that you do work with small businesses. As we said, it's Small
Mhm.
Business Month, so I wanted to
Right,
give you an
right, right, right,
opportunity
right,
to
right,
talk a
right.
little bit about that.
Yes. So before I didn't answer one of your questions, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Kind
it's
of got
okay.
passionate. You asked how did this GI brand start? So
Yes.
I went into the VA. I got I got into the business arena, and then in 2019, I thought I'm going to start working on my brand because I want to be I want the public to know who I am. The people who worked with me know who I am, but those who haven't don't. And so in November of 2018, my church has a big veteran affairs event, and everybody's put their uniform on. And so I had gained a lot of weight, stress, working too hard, not taking care of myself. And so I decided to put everything on my uniform on my hat. That's why you see that hat in my
Mhm.
LinkedIn
Right,
profile.
right.
So my daughter, who's a photographer, took a picture and I posted on LinkedIn. Well, I got a call from a multiple star mentor of mine said, "Oh, I don't think that's in regulation, Michelle." And I said, "Probably not, sir. I'm not in the military anymore." And he said, "Well, there's a regulation around how retirees can wear their uniform." I said, "Sir, there's people tearing up, burning up uniforms. I'm just trying to honor my service." So if that wasn't it good enough, he had a fellow colonel friend of mine call me and send me the regulation. And I was like, what? Being the rebel I am, you know what I did? I dug in. I dug in and it made me mad, right? And so when I went to take my picture, I was going to have some professional pictures done. I said, I'm just going to throw a hat and this dress in the bag. And when I put it on and I walked out, the photographer said, "Oh my God, this is your gift to me." And because he loved it and had not seen a military woman in that way, he captured me even in a way that and it took me 6 months to post that because I just kept analyzing. Because remember, women veterans are just now starting to be really recognized, right? And I was
Right.
like, oh, I don't like it's too feminine. Oh, and I went through all this whole analysis, over analysis. And I posted it, and the reviews were huge. And that is, I never start anything without a goal. So then I decided I want to be a LinkedIn top voice. And I said every year, I said how many followers I want to get. And I went through 2 boot camps. I've been through branding. I spent a lot of money. I do photography twice a year. All those emojis you see, I've had those made by Upwork and Fiverr. Because if you have a lot of material, then when you're posting, you're just pulling and putting it all together. And I do all of my own graphics, all of my own posts. I don't have an admin assistant. If you want to do an internship, let me know. Call me. But anyway, so that's how it started. And then Michael Quinn, who was a LinkedIn at that time, he was the only veteran LinkedIn top voice, I reached out to him, and he gave me some tips, and then I just started watching what he did, and then I did it, and I did it my way, and then
Sure.
now I just started saying it's got to be my voice, and I just went. So I was really surprised and honored, and once I got that, that is a full-time job. I will just let you know, it is. You get a creative manager, that tells you and makes recommendations, tells you what you're doing, what you're not doing, where LinkedIn trends are going to be, and try to post on those things. It's a full-time job. So
Fascinating.
that's how I got it. It was out of being rebellious. So, sometimes good things happen because you are rebellious. But then, around the same time I got into the women veteran space. And it all started because the Department of Veteran Affairs, like most organizations or agencies, have a 5% women-owned small business goal. Well, VA has struggled to meet that goal ever since 2006. And you might say, why 2006? 2006 is when the Veteran First Law came to be about. So you're talking about a law versus a goal. And so they have to meet the law, and it's suggested to make the goal. And so that's why they award contracts more to veterans. And then I said, well, women veterans are the fastest growing demographic. Let's put some stuff together. And that's when we had the first boot camp in a cohort in 2019. We've had one in 2020. We've had one in 2021 and 2022. So we've had about one per year. And it's just me. So I don't do a lot of events, but I do like large events. And I believe taking a small group of women and having a deep impact rather than just putting out information. I'm more about impacting and influencing the outcome. And so I do a lot of that based on, I call it matchmaking. People say matchmaking, but the reality is a matchmaker is a yente. You prepare the groom and you prepare the bride, right? And then they come together. In order to do that, you've got to understand what the groom wants. And I believe a man that findeth the wife findeth the good thing, and the client is the groom, and the women veterans are the brides. So we've done some amazing things, helped a lot of women, and it really is more, I think, empowerment and giving permission and helping them understand what they need to know, and them just seeing other women succeed. So, I've been on this journey, and it is my mission. It is my ministry to help women, veteran entrepreneurs, and a few good men, break into the commercial and the federal market. That's where the big dollars are, because only 4% of any woman-owned business will ever generate more than $1 million in revenue. And when a woman veteran gets it right, they get past that million in a blink once they get it right. And so my job is just to help open doors, be a small hinge opening big doors for women veterans. And it's an absolute pleasure and an absolute delight, because women veterans, we're a secret weapon. I mean, we can have babies, we can be caretakers, we can lead, we can carry a gun, and balance all those balls and do it well. Anything we put our mind to, it's getting done. So, and then I got my sisters with me. Oh my God, look out, just look out.
I
I'm
love
just
it.
saying.
I absolutely love it, Michelle. I
I
just
know we're over, so
no,
please
no,
forgive me.
it's
Please forgive me.
okay. It's quite okay. And this conversation has just been amazing. And you have so much to offer. You're living in your gift. You're just you're
Thank
living
you.
in your purpose. And it's
Thank
just
you.
it's so refreshing to talk to somebody who knows who they are, knows what they were put here to do, and does it. Just makes it happen. No
Well,
excuses.
girl, I will tell you, it's tough, because me and God had a conversation that and that I lost, because most of my friends in the Air Force are guys. And so when he gave me this woman veterans initiative, I was like, really?
Mm.
No, not me. He's like, yes, you. And he said, you have the experience, and the old shall teach the young, and you can do it. And anybody who's been in my cohorts will tell you, it's kind of like I'm in command. I don't, you know, I let them do what they do, but if they're out of order on something, if they're complaining, I'm like, girl, you're complaining. There's no other federal agency who's giving women veteran businesses this kind of attention. You have the second largest federal agency giving you this kind of attention, and you're expecting everything to be perfect. But that just goes with the veteran environment. We kind of think we're entitled, and I'm saying we kind of say, well, you're supposed to do that. Yeah, we are, but there's still constraints. There's still challenges, and so so I think the women are very grateful. 99% are amazing, but there's always a few that expect a lot and want it. Like, where's the checklist? There is no checklist for starting any business. Once you sign up, get your EIN, all that, the checklist ends. You write the business plan. That's your checklist.
Oh, yeah. So it's absolutely true. I think one of the things that I'd love to see one day in terms of services for veterans is if there was some sort of a GI Bill track for entrepreneurship.
Girl, you are brilliant.
I've heard about it. I've heard that there's people trying to work it, but I would.
Yes. And even think about home loans. You know how many people take out second mortgages on their loan? What if you were allotted this amount and I only, the loan goes up to, I think, like $1 million now. So let's say I only want to buy a $350,000 house. Why can't I take another $300,000 and put it in my business, and that be a benefit, right?
That's
those kind of things.
I hadn't thought of that one.
Yeah, no, but the GI Bill, it's there already. It's just underwritten by the government, right? And so I think that's an opportunity that I would love to see. Right.
Me too.
Right.
I'm gonna when I think one of my homeworks to myself. I've just heard some politicians talk about it, and my homework to myself is to look into if any advocacy group is working something along those lines. Because if there was a group that I knew that was lobbying to get the GI Bill changed into some sort of a program that would help entrepreneurs, I would definitely stand behind that and do what I could.
And I think a lot of people would.
I think so
and
too.
Let me know.
I will.
Anything dealing with entrepreneurship, I'd love. I'm on every Wednesday. At 7 to 8 p.m., 8:30 sometime. Have a LinkedIn Live and a LinkedIn audio. I've now gone to Wisdom, Facebook, and YouTube, where we're talking about equity in government contracting, because there's new not regulation, but laws and executive order mandates to award more contracts to women, veteran, minority, disabled, LGBTQ plus companies. And so, now there's never been a better time to be in business, to get in business. If you want to ask questions, we have a panel of experts from various perspectives who can help. And because there's a lot of information, but you don't need all the information at one time. You just need to know, what do I do? What do I need to, how do I decipher this information for the point in my business journey that I'm in? And so that's what we do. And we have an amazing time. And you talk about a free masterclass, free, FREE masterclass of resources that you will hear from people who would demystify not only the government, but demystify small business.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Michelle. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. I will meet you. Going to go to full screen just for a second, but I will meet you backstage. Any closing comments before I go to my full screen?
Yes, please follow me on LinkedIn. You can ask me a question. Sometimes people will send me something and I'll meet with them, under my VA hat. If you're a woman, veteran, business, that is my jam. That is my focus. Please reach out, listen in, lean in, comment, chat. But most of all, stay tuned, because I'm always posting resources, posting about opportunities, and just would love to grow the community, because I think we have an opportunity to really increase the wealth, right, of women veteran entrepreneurs. And that wealth is determined by you, whether it's 2 million or 200 billion. 200,000. You determine it by your plan for your life and your resilience and hard work. And I'm ready to help, and it'd be my pleasure. And oh my God, Teresa, I've had way too much fun, girl. Ask me back anytime, especially if you're talking leadership. That's my jam. Let's talk, girl.
I love it. Love it. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you to all of you for watching tonight. We'll have another show for you next week. I'll be having on another actually active duty captain who used to be a public affairs officer, and now she's
Wow,
a foreign area officer. So I'm really
nice.
excited to talk to her. She's got that mix of the diplomacy and the public affairs background. So she's got a very unique story to tell. But until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.